I'll say this for him, he's consistent.
Well, he's been so consistent all year.
Not the taste, consistency.
Consistently, yes.
Consistency! Thanks, losers.
And we're back here on the Fantasy Football Consistency Show. I'm your host, Bob Blung from Big Guy Fantasy Sports. As always, sitting on the other side of the desk there is my good friend. He's sitting on the other side of the desk all the way in Florida, which is not as close as you think. My good friend Ron Rigney. Ron, how's it going down south? It's been 90. It's been 90 here for months, like literally months, like not just a week, months. And we don't have ocean breeze coming off, which you have. It sucks. I mean, I don't mind heat, but when I haven't mown my grass in 3 weeks and I still don't need to probably for another week, if it rains at all, which it hasn't in about 2 weeks, I think I would have moved to Florida.
Well, for what it's worth, I am adding guests. So that's
oh, you're not on the back porch? Okay.
No, I'm not on the porch. I'm at, because of all the reasons that you just laid
Oh,
out.
okay.
You talk about it being 90 there for weeks. There's times here where it's 90 in December.
Right, I got you.
So it's like kind of like the surface of the sun right now. I put my grass today, no breeze, 103. 103-degree heat index. So, everything here in Wuhan, Florida is just peachy.
Nice. Yeah, my daughter lives out in Vegas. My middle daughter's out with my youngest daughter. I think today was 113, and they went hiking at Red Rock, so they're nuts. It's a dry heat. It is a dry heat, which means that your skin just burns that much faster. But we're back here. We've taken some time off. I know, prayers go out to you, Ron, for your dad. I know you've been spending some time up there. He's battling from cancer. And again, everybody out there, if you please say a prayer for Ron's dad and help him get back to health. He had surgery. We know that. We've had some, obviously COVID and lots of things going on. So we took a little time off. We apologize for all you listeners out there, but we're going to be back. We're going to be here every week as we head towards, we hope, regular season in fantasy football. We may not see a preseason in fantasy football, but we hopefully will see a regular season. So, Ron, welcome back, and it's good to have you, man.
Always glad to be here. We were talking a little bit off air about all the things coming up with Kings Classic and things like that, and I looked down in the corner of my computer, and it's July 19th already.
Yeah, we're less than a month. Yeah, I know. That's why I said we got to get things moving. So sadly, no expo, but we are doing the Kings Classic and with a bonus this year. I know you know this, but for those out there may not know, we added a third division this year. Half of that division is international fantasy football websites. And I can't tell you how excited I am about this because some of our good friends from Brazil, England, Germany, Mexico, Canada, and Australia are all part of that division. They're so jacked up to be a part of this. I'm jacked up that they're a part of it. And you know what, already I found like 4 new sites that are different countries. We might have a whole international division next year. That would be exciting to do. I know Sirius Radio loves the idea as well. And, of course, we'll be live on Saturday, August 15th on Sirius Radio. We'll definitely give you more details as we know. But the Kings Classic will continue. We'll be online this year. And, like I said, with some international flair. So we're pretty excited about that. And so we will be doing that Saturday, August 15th. All right, so we're going to head into wide receivers. I know you've been doing some drafts. I've been doing some drafts. Wide receivers this year, to be honest with you, I'm almost seeing like a no wide receiver kind of strategy this year. Now, granted, we talked off air about this. I've been doing a lot of leagues this year, a lot of new leagues, a lot of new contests, a lot of sites putting together like Scott Fish-like bowl-type bowls together. And almost all of them are super flexes, or they're 1.5 point PPR for tight end. So just really weird drafting scenarios. But what I've seen in almost all of them is that there is zero love for the wide receivers. Maybe the top 4 or 5, but beyond that, I mean, and it's working out. If you play that game, you'll win. Like I'm in a draft now. It's Fantasy and Frames. Our good friends Aaron Peggs and Jorge Edwards putting this together this year. Superflex 1.5 point PPR for tight ends, And my three receivers who I got after the 6th round are Mike Evans, A.J. Green, T.Y. Hilton, and Julian Edelman. After the 6th round. I waited on wide receivers. Didn't draft any of them. And my running backs are Alvin Kamara and Nick Chubb. My two quarterbacks are Drew Brees and Matt Ryan. Oh, and I got Hunter Henry at tight end. But listen, those are first wide receiver ones. I got 4 of them after the 6th round. It's crazy how wide receivers are falling this year. There is zero love. You can wait all you want and still get good, consistent wide receivers. I don't know what drafts you've been doing, if you've done any so far with these super flexes and stuff, but man, it's really weird out there. And I almost really want to do a straight draft just to see what the real drafts would go like, What have you been seeing?
They're not a whole lot different because right now I'm doing FanX.
Oh, okay.
Analysis mock. Chris Rito's putting that on with Mike Neese and
Right.
a couple other guys.
Right.
As well. And it's not a super flex. It's more of your traditional type setup, and it's the same deal. And also too, before you even name any of your wide receivers in any format, I know the names Julian Edelman and A.J. Green are going to pop up 99% of the time before you even open your mouth. That said, I did kind of the same thing in my draft. I have, I think, 4 or 5 wide receivers at this point. I think we're like round 11, round 12, maybe a little bit beyond that. I'm not sure. It's a slow draft, and I know I haven't been up in a while. But I ended up with Juju Smith-Schuster as my number 1. I got Edelman as my 2. I went Hollywood Brown as my 3. And I actually feel really good about that based on the fact that I've got Travis Kelce, I've got Kyler Murray, I've got Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor in my backfield. So it's not a whole lot different than what you've seen. I'm banking on some of those guys that have slipped a little bit to give me that upside. But, like in PPR, we know Edelman's going to put up numbers. I know I'm really confident Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be a nice bounce-back candidate. So, and I'm targeting – I was targeting A.J. Green a little bit later. We're kind of on the same wavelength as far as our wide receivers. For at least me anyway, I'm seeing it kind of shake out the same way depending upon where you pick in that first and second round.
All right. And the amazing thing is, like I said, this draft that I'm doing, it's got that special scenario. I mean, we're in round 12, and here's some of the guys who are still available at wide receiver, still haven't been drafted. Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Alshon Jeffrey, Sammy Watkins, Golden Tate, Hunter Renfrow, Preston Williams, Henry Ruggs, Crowder, Djax, Judy. It's just like, wow. Larry Fitzgerald, not drafted. Sanu, guys that people forget about because, they're old and blah, blah, blah. Well, they still produce every year. So, yeah, so what are we saying, folks? Wait on your wide receivers. Now, there are some studs out there we certainly want to get to, and we're going to start off, looking at our fantasy football consistency guide. If you don't have one yet, go out to Amazon, just search 2020 consistency. I guarantee it's the first thing that pops up. I know because I've tried it. And you can get it there. Go back to the website, use the coupon code, get the rest of the year VIP access for only $10. You get all the updates, all the tier draft list updates, everything during the season. Follow along the consistency report as the season progresses. So all that's out there. Go out and get that. But as we look at the review, the preview for 2020, we've got a tier 1. And it's Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins. Now, some people will argue and say, well, why isn't Tyreek Hill in there? Well, Tyreek Hill only had 67% consistency last year. Not great. Yeah, I know he was injured, but I don't think he's ready to be tier 1. People will argue with me. That's fine. But, those 4 guys have either were last year over 80% consistent or have been over 80% consistent at one point in their careers. Devontae Adams had a down year last year. Injuries to, him, Rodgers, the whole team just was a hot mess. Didn't have any really good wide receiver 2 in that team. Any issues with any of these 4 guys? I mean, the only thing right now is if you want Michael Thomas, you got to pick him in the first 5 picks. Are you ready to pick Michael Thomas at before 105 or before when there's so many good running backs on the board at that point, or are you going to take a running back like a Derrick Henry, an Alvin Kamara, somebody like that before you take Thomas?
Thomas at 1.5 is okay for me because I'm confident in some of those running backs I can get when it comes back to me.
Mm-hmm.
When in that FanX draft that I was talking about a couple minutes ago, I picked 7th, and I actually had the option to get Davante Adams at number 7. And what I ended up doing is I ended up going Travis Kelce, which is something I kind of went back on what I had said before, when we talked about tight ends. I didn't really know if I was ready to pay that price. But, like I also said when we talked about tight ends, is I had Kelce on one of my teams last year, and I kind of did this mixing and matching with the wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And it really showed me, it's one of these no-duh points that you want to get all the best players that you can get. But when you have one of those guys that's the number one guy at his position, it sets you so head and shoulders apart from everybody else at that position. So I went ahead and went the Kelce route. I skipped out on Davante Adams. I think he went to pick after me or pick 9, and I ended up getting Josh Jacobs on the way back, which I felt really good about. So I switched over Adams in that scenario. In between there, Julio and DeAndre went as well. I'm okay with those guys where they're at, but something about Davante Adams, I can't buy in. I'm not ready to give up number 7 pick, especially when a guy like Travis Kelce is there, because he's essentially like having a wide receiver 1 at your tight end spot.
And is it a 1.5 points?
No.
It's straight. Oh, yeah. All right. So interesting. Bold moves there. Bold move there, Cotton. We'll see how this strategy pays off. For all you that play dodgeball, watch dodgeball. So Davante Adams, like you said, ADP 109, Julio Jones at 203, Hopkins 203. I'm perfectly fine with those scenarios. Like you said, Adams, I don't have any shares because if I'm picking 9, I usually have to decide, is it Derrick Henry or Davante Adams? And it's like you said, there were so many good wide receivers that are going later in drafts. Why would I take Davante Adams when I can get a Kenny Golladay or a Mike Evans who will be close enough consistency-wise, and I can get them in round 3 than to pick Adams in round 1. When I can get a Derrick Henry who you can count on, you're going to get 80% consistency out of him at a running back position where there's not a lot of top options. Basically, there's about 12, and then you start reaching for players that are not worthy of that scenario. So I don't have any shares of. I don't even know if I have any shares of Thomas, because usually when I'm at 105, I see Alvin Kamara at 105, and I see Michael Thomas at 105. I have to go Kamara. Again, last year he said, he was 86% consistent, and he said that his legs were about 75%. That's impressive. So if he put up those kind of consistent numbers with only 75% of his legs, that he's ready this year, and we know Drew Brees is going to be. This team is going to go for a title. This could be Drew Brees' last year. He signed a TV contract. He's looking forward to towards the future. So this may be it. If he can go out on top, like Manning and did, that may be it for Brees. And if he doesn't win, he may go out too, but we'll see. So there's our tier 1. Hopkins is the only probably wild card here because he now plays for somebody other than Houston Texans and Deshaun Watson. Now he goes to Kyler Murray, a little bit younger quarterback, a little less experience. Certainly still is talented. Kyler Murray certainly had his moments and flashes last year. We'll see, how that works out. You got to believe he'll still be probably 80% consistent. Somewhere up there, he's going to be, worthy. If I have to choose between Julio and Hopkins, I'm going Julio because I feel like there's more I can count on there. What are your thoughts on if you're choosing between Julio and DeAndre, and let's say it's the turn round 2, early round 2, who are you going with?
I think I'm kind of with you there, and I give a slight nod to Julio just because of the experience of Matt Ryan and what they've been able to do offensively. Not to say that I'm upset with getting DeAndre there if he's available.
Right.
Julio's not, but I think out of those two, I got to go with Julio if I just have those two to pick from. Not to say that I don't really believe in Kyler Murray this year. I really do, and I think it's going to be a great offense there in the desert. But it's just not sure if they're quite ready to take that step that the Falcons have taken in that passing game in the last couple of years. Absolutely.
So that's tier 1. I don't think there's too much argument. Like I said, maybe somebody would say Tyreek should be in tier 1. And again, you can do that. But Tyreek is certainly at the top of tier 2. He is our number 5 ranked overall wide receiver in the guide. Like I said, last year, a little bit of a disappointment between injuries to Mahomes, injuries to Hill. It just wasn't his best year. But, they still won a Super Bowl. They're coming back, in full force. And with a new rookie and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, that adds some bonus to that as well. the team is certainly going to be top notch. And if Mahomes is 100% healthy and can run a little bit more, that's just going to make it that much more dangerous. Gives Tyreek more time to get downhill or downfield. The rest of the group in this order, in our ranking order: Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Kenny Golladay, Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, Julian Edelman, Odell Beckham Jr., Tyler Boyd, Allen Robinson, and Jarvis Landry. I know that when you compare this to what we're looking at here, Fantasy Football Calculator ADPs, there's some names in our group that we have that are not in the top 17 ranked players. But there are some, that are the opposite way. So as you look through the list, maybe pick out one or two guys that you see ADP-wise being either much higher, much lower, or not even in this tier that are, or that are not even in the top 17 in the ADPs, but we have them ranked much higher.
Well, one of the guys that we've already mentioned, I think keep bringing his name up, is Julian Edelman.
Right.
Julian Edelman was, I don't want to say practically free, but I got him. I think I drafted him as my actual, if I think about it now, third wide receiver. I don't think I had to take him as my wide receiver too, because I think I took Juju, and then I think I took Hollywood Brown actually before I took Edelman, which is kind of interesting there. So he slid quite a bit, and the numbers are right there, 75% consistent. He played all 16 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's really going to be a big drop-off as far as Cam stepping in there for Tom Brady. I think Cam is smart enough to know who his go-to guys are there, and I think he's going to get the ball to him quite often. I also like, kind of that middle cluster there of Juju, Moore, Allen, and Kupp as well. I think those guys are solid value, and it's just kind of like what we talked about before. If you're going with those guys and you don't necessarily get one of those tier 1 guys,
mm-hmm.
you can pair together, 2 or 3 of these guys in this middle, or at least get 2 of them. That's pretty good when you have some of those fringy wide receiver 1s and wide receiver 2s as 2 of your 3 starters for any given week.
Right. And that's what I've been doing a lot of drafts. Again, the old guys are getting zero love. Keenan Allen's another one that I just seem to have on every team, and I'm getting him as my wide receiver 2, sometimes wide receiver 3, depending on how the flow is going. Just because Phillip Rivers left, they feel like, oh, well, who are they going to throw to? Well, they're still going to throw to Keenan Allen. I mean, who else would they throw to? This guy's a machine. Cooper Kupp, ADP is 15. We have him 9. Keenan Allen, we have at 10. ADP is 22. The aforementioned Julian Edelman, we have 13th. I think that's the first time I actually ranked him outside of the top 12 in probably the last whatever number of years that he's been, a major force for the Patriots. His ADP is wide receiver 30. That's absurd. And this was, actually he's improved. He was actually at 37 or 38 a few weeks ago before they got Cam Newton. He just moved up to 30. That's how bad it's been for him. Not for him, but it's great for us because we're just grabbing him everywhere as you said, one of our top receivers. Jarvis Landry, every year is 75% consistent, maybe 70 at worst. And, you look at this list, you're like, where's he at? He's not even in the top, is he in the top 30? Oh, he's 32.
32, yeah.
Right. So basically you could wait to ADP 28 and get AJ Green, Julian Edelman, Devontae Parker, Brandon Cooks, Jarvis Landry, or Tyler Boyd. I'd be giddy to have that group as my wide receiver core, especially if I know I could wait and load up on running backs, tight ends, quarterbacks, whatever the case may be, that I can, maybe get a Patrick Mahomes in round 2 or 3 because I know I can come back and get these guys late. I don't get it. I mean, I get it. We, Ron, you and I have been in this stuff long enough. It's the shiny new toys. Everybody wants a shiny new toy. DJ Moore, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, DJ Chark, Cortland Sutton, these kind of guys. They're all up in the top 26 of wide receivers. And only really one, DJ Moore, have the consistency numbers to support it. Metcalf was, I think, 60%, 65%. DJ Moore was 80%. So he's up there. And we have him ranked 11th. It's not like we're disrespecting him. Here he's 14th. I'm actually surprised he's that low. But look who's in there. Our favorite fantasy locus, Amari Cooper, is 12th. Why? Because everybody feels like it's just, they added CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, he's going to be top 12. Why? But, there's just so much value in tier 2. Like I said, you could literally pass on the tier 1s. Just go 2 running backs. Or, like you said, go Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes in round 1 and 2. And then come back and get, we've talked about the good, consistent running backs that are out there. Mostert, Ronald Jones, all these guys that we know are good value. You could easily, like you did, go Kelce Mahomes or, Kelce Lamar Jackson or whoever you want. Maybe you go Kittle. You could literally do that this year because I think you can get away with finding good, solid talent at the wide receiver position in the later rounds because people are grabbing the Amari Coopers and Cortland Suttons in round 2 and 3. What about your Fanix draft? Have you seen those guys go much earlier or going in the earlier rounds as I've seen them?
Honestly, the ones that kind of shocked me were Mahomes and Jackson kind of hung around for a little bit longer than what I would have thought of. And it seems like a lot of the ADPs are very similar to what we have up here on Fantasy Football Calculator as far as the early guys. There wasn't really a whole lot of guys that fell, but when you start looking at these guys in tier 2, because I was just sitting here thinking to myself, I think because I waited and got my 2 running backs, I got my quarterback, I got my tight end, I think I drafted wide receivers for like 4 straight rounds because I ended up with Darius Slayton as my 4th rounder. I don't know, have the ADP in front of me, but probably the ones that I was surprised that hung around the longest were the 2 main quarterbacks. And I was just sitting here thinking about some of my best balls as well. I did exactly what you did in a lot of my best ball drafts because of what my position was. I picked anywhere from like 7 to 11, I think, in like 6 different best balls. And I think a lot of times I got Hopkins, but also I was able to either get Lamar Jackson, Kelce, or Mahomes in those first 3 picks and do exactly what you just said. Maybe get a kind of a fringy running back there, but also get some of these guys in this cluster here and feel really good about it.
Yeah, so this is a mock draft I've been doing every month with some good friends of mine. I forget who puts this together. Nick Faber. So this is actually a straight one. Everything is normal, regular PPR, all that kind of good stuff. And I'm looking at the wide receivers in round 3. One of them was A.J. Brown. Amari Cooper went in round 3. Calvin Ridley went in round 4. Metcalf went in round 4. That was before I got Keenan Allen. DJ Chark round 5. Cortland Sutton, DJ Moore that's fine, But again, and in that same draft, my 3 wide receivers are Mike Evans, Keenan Allen. Oh, my 4 wide receivers: Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, AJ Green, Julian Edelman. And I got Edelman in round 9. And
I pulled mine up. I'm trying to find out what I did here now. So I started in round 4. I took Juju at pick 4-6, which is about a round beyond what he's going for on Fantasy Football Calculator. I did get Kyler Murray round 5, and then I think I went back to receiver, so I didn't go 4 straight. Oh, maybe I waited even longer. Let's see here. I got Hollywood Brown round 7, so I went with him as my wide receiver 2. I got Edelman round 8, and then I went with Slayton, I believe, in round 9 to kind of give me those 4. So yeah, they slipped a little bit. So yeah, I was able to get Edelman round 8 as my wide receiver 3.
Yeah. Round 8, and I got him in round 9, and in a straight draft as my 4th wide receiver. So, yeah, like I said, this is the year that and I'm sure there's a lot of people that argue, oh well, he's not he won't be himself with Tom Brady, and when AJ Green, he was hurt all last year, how do you expect him to come back? And well, he was the number 1 wide receiver in Cincinnati for years prior to his injury. He's healthy. What do you expect? I mean, yeah, I know he's up there in age. I think he's 29 or 30, maybe 31. But who's Joe Burrow going to trust? It's going to be him and Tyler Boyd. And yet those 2 guys are, like I said, ADP wise, are in late. and maybe just people don't believe in Burrow. And I get it. It's a rookie quarterback. But, the kid knows how to hit open players. They were probably more wide open in LSU than it would be if he was playing for, a bad team. But, these are the Bengals. They have Mixon. They've got Boyd. They've got A.J. Green. They've got, some talent there. It's not like he's, going to a terrible team that, he's not going to be able to do anything with. So, all right. So as we move down, we're going to move down to Tier 3. I think, like you said, Tier 2 provides a lot of value. But let's be honest, Tier 3's got a lot of good players in it too. Amari Cooper is Amari Cooper. We have him ranked 18th. That's where I think he really belongs, even though his clutch rate last year was 63%, ranked 22nd. By the way, 22nd is the highest he's had ever in consistency rating, is 63%. And yet every year people put this kid in the top 12. I just don't get it. But, it's just, again, whether it's the shiny toy or whatever you want to call it, he gets way more love than he certainly deserves. But, so he is there. We have him in the top 24. That's fine. A.J. Brown certainly proved his worth last year as a rookie. This is where I think it's just a little much. Like you said, A.J. Brown here is ADP 17. We have him 19. I think that's respectable. But I've seen people, like I said, in that one draft, he drafted him in the 3rd round or 4th round. I mean, just way too early. Devontae Parker had his best season ever. That one scares me a little bit. I'm sure it does you. I can't imagine he's going to be top 12 in both points and consistency. But I think he's a good value if you can get him as your wide receiver 3. And his ADP is 29. So it's not like people believe like this guy is broken out and will be a stud the rest of his life. I know, we always kind of joked about Devontae Parker, but I think he'll still be in the 70% consistency rating, wouldn't you?
I mean, I would think so. The only thing I could see is maybe whenever Tua takes over the keys, that could be something. But, I mean, if you've got, they got Fitzmagic
giving
him the ball.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, as long as you got Fitzmagic in there chucking it, there's got to be somebody to catch it. But also, too, they have Preston Williams coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I think I look for Mike Gesicki to maybe take a step forward and kind of be a bigger part of that offense. So it could affect Devontae Parker a little bit, but I think the biggest thing that he's hinging upon is if and when they give the ball to Tua, how Tua is able to get him the ball in that offense. And I think that coaching, the coaches down there, we've talked a little bit about that off air too. We like the coaches there in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're headed in the right direction in that regard. I think they're smart enough that they're going to find ways to get Devontae Parker the ball. So
right.
I don't think that there's going to be a big drop off, but there could be a little bit of a drop off as far as him being a little bit less consistent. Right.
Which again, I think his ADP at 29. I mean, like you said, we have him at 20. It might be a little bit high for most people, but yeah, again, I don't think it's far off. I think he could. If he's 75% consistent or 70% consistent, look at Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, both 69%. That was 16th and 17th. So I don't think having him at number 20 is really too far out of the question if he can even hit that 70%. And the big shock last year, one of the big shocks last year, wide receiver was Adam Thielen's demise. Injuries certainly killed him in his 6 games, but even in the 10 games he did play, only 50% consistent. He is at least back up there ADP wise. He's now ADP is wide receiver 9. We have him at 21. It's probably a little low. But to be honest with you, it's a run first team. I mean, as long as Dalvin Cook is running the ball well, they didn't need to throw the ball as much. Now, I think Adam Thielen certainly is going to improve his numbers because Stephon Diggs has went away. They'll have a rookie on the other side, Justin Jefferson. But what are your thoughts on Adam Thielen? I think this is one of those, again, ADP says wide receiver 9. I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen him draft that high yet. I usually see a DJ Moore up there or Ridley or somebody like that. Thielen, usually ADP-wise, I see going around maybe wide receiver 15 or 16. I mean, again, we have him at 21. Might be a little low depending on how much love you have for him. But what are your thoughts on Thielen?
I like him a lot. I think he's a nice candidate for a bounce back. Stephon Diggs has been shipped out of town, so that leaves leaves even more opportunity for Adam Thielen as long as he can stay healthy. And I was looking at that ADP as well. I don't think I've seen him go that high either. He's another guy that seems like in that fourth, fifth, sixth round range, he's starting to slip a little bit. And I think in a couple of those best balls, I do have him as my wide receiver one in a couple of those scenarios, just because he got to a point where you didn't want to pass on him anymore. He hung around for about a round too long, and then you came back and he's still there. In a PPR format, I think you got to take him, but I like him a lot this year.
So in the tier 3, and as we look at the clock, which I forgot to do, so we got 15 minutes. All right, so we got to start speeding up a little bit. The last 3 I want to talk about are kind of the youngsters that everybody kind of, again, depending on who you're drafting against, there's going to be somebody that loves one of these youngsters, and that's Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, and Cortland Sutton. Of those 3, who would you draft as your wide receiver 2, which is where their ADPs are mostly? Sutton's at 25, but we've got DK Metcalf at 19, and we have Calvin Ridley at 16. So let's just assume that Cortland's at 24, and we'll keep them all in. Which one of these guys would you want as your wide receiver 2 if you had to draft one of them?
I think I have the most shares of the 3 of those of Cortland Sutton, just because I feel most comfortable with him as a receiver. I think he kind of stepped in and is that number 1 in Denver, and they did get a little bit of help in the passing game there for Drew Lock. They spent a couple draft picks, addressing that. I think that I don't think that's going to take a lot of targets away from Cortland Sutton, because I think he's clearly the go-to guy. The question mark there is Drew Lock the guy that they're going to go with at quarterback? But I think that he's going to get enough targets. He's going to get enough catches, especially in PPR. I think he's the guy that I'm going with, because when it comes to that point, him along with the other 2 are still available there, and it's just kind of your pick of the 3. But I think I've found myself going with Cortland Sutton more often than not, just because I feel more confident in his ability, not necessarily the whole situation.
Right, gotcha. All right, so let's move down to tier 4. This is basically the last 8 to 9 players in the top 36 from our ranking standpoint. There are some prizes in here, and even more surprises how bad they were last year, which is why we have some of them in this section. T.Y. Hilton's probably the one that jumps out to the most, but only 40% consistent last year. Obviously, it was a mess with Luck retiring and Brissett having to hold the load, and then Hilton missed 6 games. So he's back. He's healthy. Now we have Phillip Rivers, definitely somebody that, while he's not the most consistent quarterback from a fantasy standpoint, he's going to chuck it, and we know he likes to chuck it. He certainly had a favorite in Keenan Allen when he was in with the Chargers. I think T.Y. is a great value. I have him ranked 28th, which sounds disrespectful, but it really isn't. I mean, his ADP is 20. Like I said, I've been certainly drafting him as my wide receiver 2. I'd move him up, but I just feel like I have so many players ahead of him that I like more that I haven't. I know you're a Colts fan. You looking at bounce back for T.Y.?
My biggest thing with him, I love him to death, but he's just got to stay healthy.
Yeah.
I think that where you have him ranked as far as around that 30 range, I think that's fine, just because you look at the chart right here, and he only played in 10 games last year. And
right.
So I think a lot of the quarterback question mark gets answered, obviously, but as long as he's healthy, he's giving you quality numbers. He's a game breaker. He can beat anybody down the field. He just needs somebody to get it to him consistently. I think he has that, but he just can't get nicked up. And I think that it's fair, where you're getting him as your wide receiver 2 or 3, you can kind of plan for that as well. Right.
All right, so in that group, mostly we see 50s and 60% consistency, but we do see an 87% consistency in John Brown. We probably would have given Brown a lot more love if they don't go out and get Stephon Diggs, but they did. I still like Brown. Sadly, though, I really haven't been getting too many shares, because when you're getting Julian Edelman in round 9, why would you look for John Brown at all? But John Brown is falling pretty far back. If you can get him as your wide receiver 4 or 5, I'm fine with that. I have him 32nd just because, again, if he gets even 70% consistency, which he might, again, there's certainly a nice rapport between him and Josh Allen. I still have him ranked up there because I'm like, well, until Diggs proves that he can be worth, Diggs never really was that consistent in Minnesota. He was 60% last year, which isn't bad, But when Thielen misses 6 games, you got to assume he should do better than that. So, what are your thoughts on John Brown? Are you drafting any Bills running backs, whether it's Diggs, Browns, or even Cole Beasley, who's also a very late round value?
I don't know. I think I have Diggs maybe one place, but I found myself actually getting quite a bit of John Brown. But
Okay.
I'm not getting John Brown until he's like my wide receiver, maybe 6.
Right. Okay.
So I feel
Right.
perfectly fine with that. But I do think it's going to be a case of they're going to cancel each other's targets out because I think Josh Allen is solid enough, but it's not like they're a high-octane pass offense that they have all these targets to go around. So I think that they hurt a little bit of each other's value fantasy-wise, but I don't think it's enough that if you're getting, Stephon Diggs later, like I said, if I'm getting John Brown as my wide receiver 6, I'm perfectly fine with that. If he's 87% consistent again, great.
Yeah.
If he's 50% again, consistent at that point, I'm okay with that as well because I'm probably not going to play him most weeks in that sense.
Right. And I think he's also one of those guys that could be a good best ball player,
Yes.
because he could have those games if people are focusing too much on Diggs that Brown could kill him. I mean, he certainly got speed.
And you got to think 2 years ago, that's basically what we had John Brown for. He was that, every 3 or 4 weeks, he was that guy that would put up the 3 grabs for 90 yards and a touchdown.
Right, exactly. All right, so we got about 8.5 minutes left. Some other guys. I think the one guy that's really the wild card in this group, when you look at last year's numbers, you literally, if you did draft him, you're vomiting. Was Brandon Cooks. 29% consistency last year, only missed 2 games. Definitely was not part of the Rams offense hardly at all. End up ranked 79th in consistency amongst all wide receivers. Honestly, if he was still playing for the Rams, I probably wouldn't even have him in the top 36. But he becomes the number 1 wide receiver in Houston for the Texans, basically replacing DeAndre Hopkins. That's why I have him in the top 36. If he gets 65, 70% consistency in Houston, which you got to believe he should, I think he's a good value in the top 36. Like I said, I've been doing some drafts where I've got him as my wide receiver 3. I'm perfectly happy with that. Never been super consistent, even when he played for New England and that, he's always in the 60, 65%, but never the stud we thought he was going to be. Like when he went to New England, we all thought, oh, this is it, He had that one good year in for New Orleans, but then he goes to New England and just doesn't put it together, and obviously went to the Rams has been even worse. So your thoughts on Brandon?
I've been getting him as my 3 and my 4 a couple different
Right.
places, and I'm kind of shared that same opinion about everybody being super down on him his whole the majority of his career. But when you go and you look at his stats out of the years that he has played, he's got 4 years over 1,000 yards receiving. He's got 2 years over 80 catches. He's got 3 years over 7 touchdowns. So when you look at his numbers overall, he's really only had about 2 seasons where he's really disappointed. His rookie year, he only put up 550 yards, 53 grabs. And then last year, 42 grabs and 583 yards there and only 2 scores. I think he's poised to be one of the bigger values that kind of coming out of this category. Like you said, he's playing with Deshaun Watson, who's a dynamic quarterback who can extend those plays and get him the ball. I think it's a great scenario for him, and there's just really not a heck of a lot else there. I think Brandon Cooks is shaping up to be a really, really nice buy low candidate and really return some solid value.
Absolutely, especially when you realize that Houston did one thing that was most important for them this year, and it wasn't trading DeAndre Hopkins for a bag of rocks or David Johnson, whatever you want to call him. It was the fact that they went out and bolstered that offensive line. Deshaun Watson never had a lot of time to throw the ball. If he can have some more time to throw the ball and Brandon Cooks can run those deep routes, like you said, this could be your bounce-back candidate by far of the year. Certainly should be winning an award in the Fantasy Consistency Awards as Comeback Player of the Year if he can even come close to what we think he should be. So definitely great value there. Some other good values I see in here too. Marvin Jones, always been consistent. Definitely had a down year last year. Stafford wasn't 100%, and he only Marvin missed 3 games. But just past couple years, he was always at 65, 70% consistent. If Stafford, who was, 78% consistent in the first 8 games before he got hurt. I mean, if he comes back and even comes close to that, Marvin Jones, of course, Galladay as well, but Marvin Jones is the best value here. Everybody's drafting Galladay in the top 12, top 12 wide receivers, so we know that. But, man, if you can – I've been getting Jones as my wide receiver 4 and 5. I think that's some excellent value. I have him in the top 36 for sure. Again, even last year with only 54% consistency, he was ranked 37th. So he was barely outside the top 36 with what probably is one of his most, worst years he's had in the last few.
No, I totally agree. And it's kind of like he's one of these guys when you get to a certain point, it's almost like free money that he's sliding so much. And, Marvin Jones is another guy that in all the best balls I've done in this FanX draft that I'm doing, he has definitely slid, getting absolutely no love. And he's another guy, too, that people I think forget just how good and how consistent Matthew Stafford was when he was in there. I think they're just kind of remembering a couple of years ago where that offense really kind of sputtered and he had a down year. But they forget that, he was hurt, but when he was in there, he was getting those guys the ball and they were putting up some numbers.
So last guy in this group, and I think a lot of people would probably be very shocked to see him in the top 36. I have him there, and I'm not wavering on it. I don't care what his ADP is, and that's Golden Tate. Obviously the Giants receivers don't get a lot of love. It's not the best scenario. Daniel Jones isn't the best quarterback from a fantasy perspective. But Tate last year missed the 4 games because of fertility drugs that he was taking, and that was obviously a banned substance. So he missed the first 4 games. So the last 11 games that he did play, he was 82% consistent, which ranked him 4th overall of all wide receivers. Yet his ADP is wide receiver 60. So, again, I'm drafting him as my 6th, 7th wide receiver, which is absurd when you realize how good he was last year. And, again, he did this with – I know Sterling Shepard got hurt, and, then there was Darius Slayton involved. But, the one guy you could count on every week just about was Golden Tate. And yet there's no love for him at all. I'm getting him as super, super late value. I mean, outside of Cole Beasley, who I think is another great value, but you can get him at wide receiver 73. I think Colton Tate is just a great value. And again, if you want to take a Sterling Shepard or a Darius Slayton, if you feel that's the thing, but I think Golden Tate's the man in New York. He certainly had a great rapport with Jones when he was there.
I do like Darius Slayton a lot, but I'm with you on Golden Tate. I'm still kind of sour on him from a couple of years ago where I paid a lot for him. But, yeah, he's the number one guy there. He does have Daniel Jones there, so how Daniel Jones goes is kind of how I believe Darius Slayton goes. But I think Tate can be a little bit more consistent with his numbers, and especially in a PPR, because he's going to be the guy I think that gets looked to first out of all those 3. Evan Ingram's there as well, so he's going to get some targets when he's healthy. But, yeah, where you're getting Golden Tate at, yet again, like you said, as your wide receiver 6, and he's 82% consistent. I don't know too many guys where the following year you drafted them as your wide receiver 6 after posting over 80% consistency. Right.
Well, and that's why we do this book. That's why we do this information, because when you look at his numbers last year, because they only played in 11 games, he was 43rd in total points. So, everybody's like, oh, well, he was okay, but look, he's 43rd. Well, the problem was he missed 4 or 5 games. So, that's really what it comes down to is, the consistency is showing a player like Tate who you can count on and can get at a great value as one of your backups. And he may be your starting flex by week 1 or 2, once you see how, everything's going in New York for him. And you might be able to trade off your wide receiver for some value for a better running back. So that's what you got to do. So we got about a minute left. So, Ron, baseball season is coming up next week. We're going to get back into the fantasy baseball consistency stuff. I know you're probably knee-deep in it with your boys. So tell us what's going on with your boys on the baseball side.
Yeah, so we for the Nasty Cast, we do a podcast. You guys know that every week. We're finally consistently back into that. We're going to do our Listener League draft this week. So we're going to do our 3, Van, myself, and Nate. We're going to do that live. We're going to be picking live on air, so check that out. But, yeah. We're going to be ramping it back up because we actually have things to talk about now.
Yeah. Yeah, and what, opening day is Wednesday?
The 23rd, yes, sir.
Fantastic. So finally some sports to watch with no fans sitting there. But all right, so you can find him, of course, at The Real Made on Twitter. Make sure you hit him up. You can always find me at Bob_Lung. And, of course, don't forget to get that fantasy football consistency guide. Drafts will be here in a few weeks. Preseason or no preseason, you got to get your drafts in. So we'll definitely be coming at you every week. Next week, we'll be hitting the tight end position, which there's a lot more depth this year than normal. So, everybody, thanks again for being here. For Ron Rigney, I'm Bob Lund. Everybody, have a great week. Take care. God bless.